And this week's Torah reading is Parshas Vayikra, the Torah reading that discusses the sacrifices, the korbanos. Our experience for 2,000 years and reading the book of Leviticus just summarizes, encapsulates so much of what we're going through today. Look, we've read this portion that deals with the rituals which are no longer, which I don't want to say no longer, which are at this point in time not relevant, not practical. And so, in a similar way, I think the way in which we read Parshas Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, is instructive to us today as we confront the various that we're not able to do at this time. So, if you think about it, today we are and have understood that it represents a body of the Torah that is not practical in the literal sense. And yet, these passages of the Torah, and we've analyzed them, and we've read the commentaries on them. We've read the Torah down in order to express a certain eternal truth. And so, where the road might be blocked, in some sense, the eternal truth is still available, present, and we're called to express that perhaps some teachings that are available in our life today. So let's think about what is a korban. When a person shall draw near, shall bring close from you an offering to God, bring back, as it were, to God. So let's think about what that means in a time when we feel that we experience the presence of God in our lives. Perhaps you felt it falling out and you really feel the presence, the holiness of the moment of the time. Or perhaps it was some other moment of truth in our lives when we hear the voice of God, when we are able to experience His presence. And this, in Kabbalistic terms, is referred to as Isarusa de La'ela, the awakening from above. On the other hand, the korban, the sacrifice that's described in our parsha, two kinds of sacrifices that are referred to in the portion. One says that a person can at any time choose to bring an offering, to bring a sacrifice to God. And the other is the offering, and that's the bulk of we experience the presence of God, or the path in which we choose to bring a korban, a sacrifice. The path where we experience the presence of God, we would say it's holy, it's sacred, it's transcendent, it's amazing, it's something that we seek. Look, everyone, in a sense, has a certain hole in our heart. And that hole in our heart is made in a way bigger and more raw by the amount, my soul thirsts for you, my flesh yearns for you in a land that is dry and waste without any water. Indeed, I have seen you in sacred times. And so, in a way, it might be saying that, and yet, those experiences that we have are just majestic and amazing when they're there. Like, let's say it's Yom Kippur, which again, not in my control. I can't make it Yom Kippur today if it isn't. Or because of the place, it's in Israel, let's say, or I'm at the Kotel. I can't make this place the Kotel. Or because, for whatever reason, I've been given the gift of God's presence. I've been given a model, and it's also the weakness of the model. The power of the model is that it's of God. It's beyond me. It's greater than me. And when I go, it's something that I can't push a button and make be there when I need it most sometimes. And that's why the spiritual experience itself can be a source of frustration later on. To this, we have the other model, which is which we haven't really talked about much, which is the model of the korban, in which a person chooses to bring a sacrifice to God. And what is this? What does this mean? So here we're talking two categories. One is the meditative category, and the other is the practical category. Now, let's start with the practical category. And this represents the idea that a korban, a sacrifice, is a gift of things. It comes from Hashem. At the same time, there is a mitzvah for every moment of life. And if essentially at every moment, I have the choice to either live in service of Hashem or to not be in service of Hashem. And those things might feel the furthest thing away from spirituality. At the same time, they're always available. And I think I may have told the story last week, but I think it bears repeating again. The story of Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech. And the story goes that Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech were two Hasidic teachers, two mystics, two Hasidic Rebbes. That was the shared bathroom for the whole prison. So Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech are locked up in this prison cell, again together with rats and criminals. And of course, they believe in Hashem. They have strong emunah. They have strong faith, and they keep their spirits up. And a whole night, they're physically suffering but spiritually connected. Take away my ability to connect with you. And Rabbi Elimelech says, "My brother, let me ask, that commanded you to put on tefillin also commanded you that when you're in a bathroom, you're not allowed to wear tefillin. And so now you're fulfilling this mitzvah you're fulfilling a new mitzvah, a new commandment from Hashem, a new commandment from God that calls you to Melech." The guard, seeing the chaos, bangs on the door. "What's going on over there?" And all the other prisoners point to the Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech. They say, "He started it." And the guard says, "What's going on over here? What are you trying to do?" And they said, "You hear of the rejoicing of Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech. They're rejoicing in it becomes an opportunity to connect with God." And so this is the first chapters of Leviticus. We see, first of all, there's different kinds of korbanos. There's sheep, there's cow, there's to him from the life that we are living in this moment. And so it's not and the korban of the person who brings from live animals is not better or worse than the person who brings God to worship him and to connect with him. Because in a sense, if we believe that God put us in the situation in which we find ourselves right now, then we must also believe that he put us here for a reason. And that reason, if God chose to give it to us. But in a sense, and here's another way in which these two things correspond. When I have a spiritual moment, right, and let's say I experience Yom Kippur, or I experience the Kotel, or I experience an inspired moment, that the power of that moment will be about Jewish history or knows more about Torah, will have a deeper and more fulfilled experience when it comes to Yom Kippur, when it comes to being at the Kotel, or when it comes to an inspired moment. The more a person knows about God, the more inspired they'll be in that spiritual moment, right? But at the same time, it also means that whatever we're experiencing, even the most spiritual moment of all, is limited to our ability to experience. And every one of us has a limited ability to experience and has a limited capacity to understand God that is definitely, completely limited. Even the most spiritual moment, even the most transcendent moment that a person will have will be limited. The most trippy spiritual experience I have is going to be we're working on social distancing. Or if I would love to go and hug my friend, but I can't because we have to keep each other safe. That that moment, if I'm not living for my fulfillment, I'm living to serve, then my service is as great. That means that I am actually connecting with that which is beyond experience. I'm connecting with things that human beings. Again, the mitzvah of putting on tefillin will only be as great a mitzvah. The thou shalt mitzvahs, the mitzvahs aseh, the positive mitzvahs, will only be, even though, as we said earlier, I'm serving God and I'm connecting to the infinite divine, but nonetheless, there are levels, there are degrees to which a person can achieve the perfection of a mitzvah. One person might have better quality tefillin. One person might put on the tefillin correctly or incorrectly. A person might put on the tefillin with greater devotion or with greater. If I'm the same way that he doesn't daven with the minyan, I'm also not davening with the minyan. In a sense, the thou shalt around the bucket more than when he puts on tefillin, because this is a new gilui, a new revelation of the presence of Hashem that is uh, beyond even his ability to put on tefillin. Okay, so what have we said so far? There is the call from above, the Vayikra el Moshe, the awakening from above. And this might be spiritually fulfilling, and it might goes. Whereas the mitzvah, the awakening from below, when we turn toward Hashem in service, that's something it may not feel fulfilling, and it may not feel inspired, but if we're serving, then there's always something that we can do in the service of God from the practical perspective. Now I want to turn to the experiential, the meditative perspective. And here, the fact that they've sinned and that they have now, they want to improve meditation, the availability for teshuvah. There is nothing that stands in the way of a person who wants to turn themselves. Despite that, he gives us the opportunity to serve him at every time, at every turn. Or if we think, and we're lucky, there are so many people who are so much worse off than we are. This is something that we can always turn to in every moment. We can always look to the fact that we're alive and recognize the gift of life, and the gift of the life that is as good as it is, because Lord knows it could be worse, and for many it is worse. Or the fact that we are still given the opportunity to live and serve, despite the fact that we have ignored God sometimes. These two meditations are for a minyan, not waiting to be in a chevra, a group of people who are as inspired as I am and with whom I can share that same inspiration, and we can all kind of turn from individual candles into a roaring flame and really experience the spiritual holiness. It's always, I'm looking into my own human experience, not waiting for anything else. I can look at the fact that I'm alive, and I can look at the fact that Hashem allows me to serve him, joy and inspiration that's always available. And this is the awakening from below. This is the korban. This is, in a sense, this is bringing this is something, again, which we can call upon at any time, but at the same time, there's something very magical about this. First of all, transforming the human experience, the human/animal experience, into worship of God. And this is symbolized by the ola, the taking of the animal and dark thing, and that actually becomes a vehicle for avodas Hashem, for the service of Hashem. And so if we think about, again, going back to the galus, the exile, there was a time when we could serve karbanos, when we could bring sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash, or we could worship God in that sacred and holy place. And then after a time, we were put into exile. We were sent into more restrictions, where we could no longer bring sacrifices, we could no longer bring karbanos in a sacred place. And then we were placed into a further galus, into a deeper exile, in which we cannot even gather as a community to pray. And we cannot practice many of the good things that we wished we could be able to practice. And so we're reaching into the darkest corners of the universe. And what we're called to do here is Adam ki yakriv mikem karban Hashem min ha-behema, min ha-bakar, or min ha-tzon. That a person should bring from his own experience, or from her own experience, an offering to God. And we are specifically primed, because we've been put here by God, we're specifically primed to leverage this darkness into a new worship of Hashem, into a new worship of God. What might that be? So, first of all, one thing that we have now that we haven't had in most of history is, besides for the digital technology, which allows forming the tools of isolation into the tools of connection. If you think about it, since Facebook came out, people have been complaining about how everyone stands absorbed in their phones and they're ignoring the people around them. And now that very same darkness is a tool for life. But I also want to talk about the advent of mental wellness that in the last been about relationships. And today, I think we are called psychological and emotional wellness to be able to reach a deeper consciousness and deeper awareness of ourselves. And it's so hard to be alone. It's some of the hardest, the worst punishment, when you have somebody who's in prison, so they've already been punished. How do you punish someone who's already being punished? You put them in solitary confinement. I can't even imagine what that is. But all I could say is that I hope that in that darkness into light, and how to leverage that thou shalt not into a service of Hashem, and how to, in all of that time that we have for our thoughts to go all kinds of places, that we could find thoughts that would encourage, inspire, and connect us with Hashem. And so, while on the one hand, Vayikra el Moshe, God calling to us, is a special gift, on the other hand, Adam ki yakriv mikem, the person who turns, you hear what I'm saying? Our turning to God in service is, in a sense, greater than the expression. Thank you for watching and joining us. Please share this video, subscribe to our channel, and we need your support more than ever now.